Morning, Eights. Mr. Westra here with Half Brother reading number 7, part 2. Chapter 6. School Begins. In the last week of August, Dad and Mum started interviewing students to work with Zan. The idea was that Zan would have someone with him from 8 in the morning till 6 in the evening, taking care of him and playing with him, but all the while teaching him sign language. Even though it was Dad's project, he wasn't going to be spending much time with Zan. He'd be at the university, teaching courses and going through the data everyone collected. Day by day, it was Mum who'd be running the show, doing a 5-hour shift, training and overseeing the students, and working on her doctoral thesis. Mum and Dad figured they'd need at least 10 research students. Mum wanted the interviews to be at our house so the applicants could meet Zan. And Zan was picky. There were lots of people he didn't like, especially guys. He wouldn't come close to them, or he'd be aggressive and pull at them and shriek. A couple he tried to bite. Maybe he saw them all as trespassers. Chimps were very territorial, and Zan seemed to think this was his house to rule. He didn't want any more males in it. And Dad was almost as picky. He thought most of the students were flakes he wouldn't trust to fill up the car. Luckily, there didn't seem to be any shortage of people wanting to work with Zan. Dad said the entire university was buzzing about the experiment, and lots of students were eager to play with a baby chimp and earn some extra money in course credit. But as September crept closer, they'd hired only 6 people. Peter McKeever arrived for his interview on a Tuesday afternoon, 15 minutes late. I was the one who opened the door. He had long brown hair in a ponytail and a beard, and his clothes were very hippie-ish. He actually wore a peace button. He looked rumpled and smelled musty. "Hey," he said with a smile so big and friendly I smiled back right away. "Hi," I said. "I'm Peter McKeever. Sorry I'm late. I sort of got lost. Had to ask for directions." He looked back vaguely at his car, like he was amazed it made it here. I was amazed too. His car was the most beat-up thing I'd ever seen. I felt kind of sorry for him. I knew Dad wouldn't like him. "Listen," I whispered, and he leaned in closer. "When he asks you why you want to work for the project, tell him you think Chomsky is dead wrong. Chimps do have the cognitive ability to acquire language. Tell him you want to be part of the world's first study to communicate with another species." I'd eavesdropped on enough of these interviews to know the questions Dad asked and the kinds of answers he liked. "Uh-huh," said Peter. "Cool." "Come on in," I said, and showed him into the living room, where Dad was waiting with all these notebooks around him, looking terrified and stern. I headed upstairs, but just at the top I stopped and waited so I could hear what happened. At first, Dad did the talking, his usual spiel about the project and its aims. I heard some papers rustling, and I knew that he was reading Peter's resume and transcripts. "So," said Dad, "you're going into your 3rd year, majoring in psychology. You've got some linguistics courses under your belt. That's good." There was a pause. "Your 2nd year marks are a bit sloppy." It was the same kind of thing Dad said to me about my report cards. "Yeah," said Peter. "I didn't have a great year last year, but I'm much more organized this year, more focused, you know." "Do you know any ASL?" Dad asked. "What's ASL?" I winced. This was not going well. "American Sign Language. That's what we'll be using to teach Zan." "No, but I'm good with languages. I grew up in Montreal and my French is still pretty good. I could pick ALS up like that." And he snapped his fingers. "ASL," he corrected. "And you'd have to pick it up fast. So why do you want to work with Zan?" I smiled in relief. I'd given Peter the perfect answer for this one. "Well, okay, I'm going to have to be honest about this," Peter said. "I really liked Planet of the Apes. Not the book. No, sorry, not the movie, but the book, you know. The original French novel. I mean, I didn't read it in French, but it was written in French originally. The movie was all right. Did you see the movie?" "I didn't know," I heard Dad say tersely. My mouth was hanging open. I couldn't believe it. What was Peter doing? "Anyway," he went on, it was really thought-provoking, you know? And it made me think about ape intelligence and human intelligence. And yeah, I'm curious about how smart they are, because in the book, they evolve way beyond us. We like to think we're the smartest thing going, but maybe we aren't, you know?" "Well, in this world we are," said Dad. "And I love animals," Peter hurried on. "I had tons of pets growing up." "This isn't about pets," said Dad. This is about finding out how language begins and whether humans are the only creatures capable of it. Oh, said Peter. But you'd want someone who was good with animals, wouldn't you? If you wanted to teach the chimp? I came downstairs and went to the kitchen to get a drink. As I passed the living room, I caught Peter's eye. He looked defeated, slouched in his chair. In the kitchen, I opened the fridge and took out a bottle of Coke, listening. I don't know if you're ready for this, Peter, I heard Dad say. Seems to me like you need to be concentrating on pulling up your marks. Well, I'll definitely be doing that, Peter replied, but I'd also like to be part of this project. I mean, Chomsky is just way out of line on this, you know? Humans aren't the only animals on the planet that can have language. I know Zan could learn. I paused, mid-pour, for Dad's reaction. Interesting, said Dad. So you're more a proponent of B.F. Skinner? Absolutely, said Peter. I think his ideas about behavioral conditioning are far more persuasive. Right on, I murmured to myself. I turned as the sliding glass door to the backyard opened and Mum came in, carrying Zan. During an interview, she would always take Zan outside so Dad could conduct the session in peace, and then she'd bring him in at the end. How's it going? Mum whispered to me. I like him, I whispered back. Dad might be coming around. Mum nodded and went through to the living room. I hung back in the doorway, watching. Hey, there's the little man, said Peter when he caught sight of Zan. Mom put Zan down on the carpet. A lot of the time, Zan would just scamper back to her, but not this time. He looked at Dad, then Peter, and made a happy pant hoot and scampered straight for him. He grabbed hold of Peter's leg and stared up at him beseechingly. I think he wants a hug, said Mum. Without hesitation, Peter reached down and lifted Zan onto his lap. It was the first time I'd seen Zan so eager to meet someone outside our family. Hello, Zan, said Peter, smiling. Zan pulled on Peter's beard. He likes you, Mum told Peter. And I like him, said Peter, chuckling as Zan tried to pull off his peace button. Wow, Peter said. His eyes. What about them, Dad asked. It's just, you look into them, and there's a real person looking there back at you. I liked Peter more and more. Zan was now climbing up his chest onto his shoulders and trying to swing on his ponytail. Okay, Peter, we'll let you know by the end of the week, said Dad. Thanks for coming. Why bother keeping him in suspense, said Mum. He's hired. Dad looked at her in surprise, and I did too. They'd never told any of the other candidates right away. I could see Dad wasn't happy, but he wasn't going to make a scene in front of Peter. Dad hated scenes. He thought they were inappropriate. Honest? Peter said. His face was alight, looking from Mum to Dad. I think he was as confused as I was. Mum walked towards him, and with her hand extended, I'm Sarah Tomlin. I'll be the chief researcher on the project. We'll be in touch with your schedule next week. Hey, thanks a ton. Thanks so much, said Peter. Okay, this is great. Zan climbed off Peter and into Mom's arms. Dad smiled tightly. See you next week then, Peter. And that's the end of Half-Brother number 7. And you can look for your response in Google Classroom.